nice to see you all. Thank you all for coming out. Hopefully it's the end of dry January for some people. I know it's a really impression to you. So yeah, here to talk to you. I'm a paid social specialist, sorry. But I'm going to talk to you about a topic which is hopefully relevant for everyone in this room, how to measure paid media in a post-cookies world. And yeah, I've been at Impression for a really long time now, and been doing paid social for longer, so when Meta ads were called Facebook ads, yeah, seems like a really long time ago now. But yeah, let's move on to a topic for 2023. What we're going to go through today, we're going to go through a bit of the market conditions, maybe some things that we're all thinking about this year when it comes to measurement and how to justify our jobs, like campaigns, everything else. We're going to go over the story so far, so what's happening with privacy in the past and cookies and what's going to happen in the future. We're going to bring it back to the challenges and how that actually relates to our roles, some practical ways to succeed, so hopefully you'll come away with a few takeaways. A little bit of word and attribution, it's a big topic, so an intro to and some ideas of how to get started to move past attribution and towards contribution, and then a few ideas of what next steps to take. Cool, market conditions. So macro factors, things within the wider world are making this issue of measuring advertising a lot more pressing this year. We did a survey at Impression. This is actually, I'm going to admit this is a 2022 survey. It was coming out for 2023. Our 2024 one isn't quite done yet. It's really similar to the data. So if you see 2022 thoughts for 2023 report, it's the same. But yeah, in terms of this room, we're thinking about algorithms and how much that's changing at the moment and how little control we really have over that, even though we would like to. The rise of AI and different forms of technology. And obviously, as Abby says, cos he lives, the cost of living crisis, upcoming recession, people wanting to pay a bit less for things which impacts all of us in marketing, not just in paid. When we did the survey at the end of last year, 63% of people surveyed, so it was 1,000 people in marketing, sort of working in-house for brands, said that this was their single biggest challenge, so yeah, massively on top there. And we can send you the survey if you like, I'm sure it's online still. It was the same across all different sizes of companies, so it might be a bit small, but they all represent different sizes of companies, and rising cost of living and increased operating costs were the same across a lot of different businesses. So whether you work with SMEs or massive enterprise businesses or work within them, the issues are pretty much the same. And we did ask what the leading kind of measure of success was. I should have hidden this, but I think everyone in this room could probably attest it's revenue. This is what we're judged on. It's revenue above most other things. But also a quarter of people said that their key challenge was not necessarily performance, not necessarily cost of living, but understanding how to measure the performance of each channel. So, a bit of scene setting. Now we're going to go into a bit more detail on the cookie death and attribution and how that's changed in recent years. So, measurement's always been tricky, even since when I first started, and it was pre-iOS, pre-cookie updates, a lot more complex in the last 3 years. We're increasingly focusing as digital professionals on user privacy, and by that, like, if you ask your mum or your parents or your grandparents, they've all got a sense that they don't really trust what we're doing. They don't really trust who's got their data. Is Facebook listening to you? I don't know. I don't think so. But users are really feeling a lack of visibility into and control over how your data is being used. So it's a very murky world, and there's a lot of pressure from users to try and get kind of ahead of that and to instill a bit more of a structure within advertising. By privacy, there's a few different kind of definitions, but I've just nicked this from Google. So by privacy, they want to say how you use data should be transparent, so you should know who's got your data, how it's being stored, who it's being shared with. You should also have the choice to be able to say, I do or don't want to share it with these certain platforms and these certain providers. And you should have the actual control, so you should be able to accept cookies, decline cookies, as we all kind of do on different websites. So what's really driving this is basically us, as individuals, even if you would rather give your data to Meta or to Google, you're probably the minority, so you're increasingly aware of how ad data and tracking works, and you want a bit more privacy online. And it was really spurred on, I think not a lot of people thought about this when advertising was first becoming a thing online. It's just, oh, different products follow you around. Isn't that useful or annoying, and I don't think people thought too much about it. But big tech has been coming into the news a lot recently, so if you think back to things like the US election and voter fraud and Russia, investigating and things like that. Brexit, obviously TikTok's been firing line with the US, people aren't quite sure how the different kind of geopolitics that are interacting with, how people are interacting with things online. So yeah, a lot of news and events has kind of brought on people who aren't necessarily digital professionals to become interested in this kind of world. And legislation, so the governments have kind of woken up a little bit, and then they're trying to catch up with what's actually possible with tech and what their kind of constituents might be after, and introducing various amounts of legislation where people have to put the cookie banner acceptance on the website and comply with GDPR, all things that weren't existing 10 years ago, I think. And also tech's obviously aware of this as well, they're designing products, they're designing how their kind of infrastructure works, and then they're trying to also get ahead based on what might need to happen in the future. So obviously people have been aware for a long time now that cookies aren't going to be with us very much longer, third-party cookies anyway, and they're also aware of what regulations might be coming up and what they're lobbying against or what they're aware of kind of being in the works. Are there any other paid social people in this room? It's all PPC. Oh, got a few little hands. Hi. My favourites. How do we feel about iOS 14? Is it distant memory? Were you working social at the time? A few sort of scared looks. This was the thing which the PPC team weren't too interested in, to be honest. Quite offensive. It was one of the biggest changes from Apple, which kind of sets the scene for what might happen with cookies this year and how big a change it really will be. So Apple basically brought out this new Apple Tracking Transparency, ATT, which made it possible for users to actually really easily say, I do or I don't want to be tracked by this app, say Facebook, on other sites around the internet. Before, people didn't really have a choice. And it was possible to opt out, it wasn't that easy. So you get this little prompt, and most of you probably got it in this room if you've got an iPhone. So you can either allow tracking or ask the app not to track you. No thank you, Meta. I don't really want to see what else I'm doing, which don't really get me. On Meta's side, what happened was they would get the prompt. If people opted in, a few people, I opted in just as a test, they didn't change how your data was being used and stored. It was all still, if you made a purchase, then you'd come up as a purchase in my campaigns. But if you opted out, it's quite obscure as to how it actually works and how the models work, but they'll basically limit the data use. So conversion events were restricted, aggregate delayed by up to 3 days. We start seeing conversions coming a lot later into the platform, and it was a lot more signal-based or model-based than what we've been used to in the past. So it took a long time to get used to it, and basically we're signaling and modelling things much more based on the user how opted in, and then what Meta thinks is in the wider pool. So a lot more obscure compared to simple attribution, which we'll go through in a bit later. And some things didn't change, and I wouldn't expect them to change hugely when it comes to Google and other platforms. So if you think about the cookie death, so first-party data, platforms still owned their own first-party data, and you were still able to tell a lot about the users, for example, how they interact on the platform. So you could still see if people have watched your videos, you could still see what people are following and do targeting that was based on that, like what they within Instagram, within TikTok. But it was what they were doing on the wider website that you might be missing, or a little bit more kind of shielded from now. But you were also able to still serve users. I think if some people thought, oh, if I've opted out, I won't get any ads anymore, you didn't, but they were just less targeted to you personally than they would have been before. And what's already changing, so Google's cookie deprecation, third-party cookies being removed from Chrome, as I said before, a big change happened in a few days into January actually, which we did see the impact of a couple of campaigns, especially retargeting. But yeah, 1% of overall traffic, they had this cookie removed as kind of their initial test. The actual date has been pushed back a few times now. I think it's Q4 this year. They're saying it's going to be completely phased out. But yeah, a lot of that's basically the infrastructure of how we're tracking people online and how a lot of these platforms are working now, how GA4 is recognising where people are coming from. So yeah, a lot of that is definitely going to change this year. There's a few things which Google are putting in place to try and get around this. They've got things called privacy sandboxes, which I think are quite fun. So they're basically still going to track you. They're definitely still going to track you, but they're going to basically build a little wall around where the information is being stored, not give it out to as many people, including themselves maybe. And they're also going to start bucketing people into different user groups and different cohorts using Flock, so buckets of people rather than individuals. So I think as in paid social, the few of us that here are actually like best prepped for this change, because it was never easy to measure paid social. It was never straightforward because of where we sit in the funnel. But I'm going to, if you imagine paid social here, just extrapolate that to paid media, and that's going to be us in a couple of years' time. So paid social, rarely last first channel, as we know. It's higher up the funnels, more impression-based, more view-based, meaning that measurement is really carefully considered. So if you work on campaigns generic Google search, programmatic advertising, display, all of that kind of spend will be really suitable for this kind of technology. A comment which is only interesting to marketers, it's not even that funny, it's more a little smile. But yeah, obviously if you see different adverts out in the world, and then you end up converting via mobile, then that's what people will assume is driving a lot of traffic, especially for businesses that haven't really interrogated this that much before and they've got quite a short-term mindset. In my mind, I replaced that little, we should move 100% of spending to mobile with brand PPC, because that's, if someone's going to max out brand PPC, then maybe we'll see if you've got any money. So yeah, sorry, you're my natural enemy. But yeah, this will become increasingly difficult to tell even where people have come from, but especially the mindset of just putting it on the bottom of the funnel will be even more prevalent when it comes to post-cookies world. And slightly differently to cookies, has anyone used a slide like this before in presentations? Yeah, I have. Probably not in our colours, but yeah, this is the ADA funnel. It makes a lot of sense. Awareness, interest, desire, action. Maybe some versions have like retention at the bottom and things like that. It doesn't really work, to be honest. Life's a lot more complicated than that, and tracking is a lot more complicated than that as a result. This is a chart that I've made from Google, again, so I'm kind of, I like this chart a little bit more. It kind of reflects that you've got a lot of exposure to loads of ads sort of in your day-to-day. I can't remember the stat, but yeah, you end up viewing hundreds of ads just in your day-to-day life, both online and offline. It might be a trigger, like you actually decide that you want a new bag, or you might see a really compelling ad which makes you think, oh, I quite like that. And then you move into the sort of exploration, evaluation kind of funnel. I guess that would be like interest, desire, sort of synonymous. And then you go in to make the purchase. But at any point, you could wander off back up there, you could forget you even wanted it, and then you can come back in. So kind of reflects that it's a lot more messy these days than just a typical ADA funnel, which I think it always was, but the importance of tracking changes has made this even more important to realise it's not that straight journey from first impression to purchase. And it's not linear, so some more stats from Google. This was a 2022 study. Apparently people are making decisions a lot slower, or at least slowly. 77% of consumers have made a decision, needed up to 6 months to decide. So even if you had cookies, like they're probably gone by now, you don't necessarily know at what point that person first made that decision. But on the other hand, there is a bit more openness. So 47%, nearly half of people in this survey bought something from a new brand they never bought from before in the past month. So there's not that much brand loyalty. People are willing to buy from brands that they've not heard of, which is good for like challenger brands or for people who are new to the market. Less good for maybe the stalwarts, but I think most of us in this room are probably working with clients that want to be those sort of household names and want to be like the market leaders in their category. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of openness as well as a lot of hesitation around when to purchase. So what are the challenges? I'm going to bring it back to like what this actually means for us in this room. I'm sure that everyone can empathise with it. It's really difficult to prove cause and effect. I've been sat on calls with my clients where I've said, I've had an amazing week, like our new campaigns have done really well, and then they've pointed out to me, oh, no, I actually did a big email campaign, we changed our pricing, oh, we have free shipping, did we forget to tell you that? It's really hard for us to then know, take credit for, or realise what actually happened when so much else is going on. So really difficult to isolate it from other factors. And also time is a big issue. So we need to continually balance business decisions that drive long-term growth against the short-term results required. everyone knows that brand awareness is a good idea, but when our marketing managers, our clients, have got short-term KPIs to hit, it can be really difficult to take a step back and commit to a long-term measurement journey when they have got short-term sales goals to hit. And siloed thinking. So a lot of us in this room work in different disciplines. It's really easy, like Holly was mentioned before, it's really easy not to talk to each other. So whether you're working within a brand, in agency, there's a lot of different silos between people and teams and different strategies, so it's really difficult to agree on what that measurement journey looks like. There's not one clear method where we're like, okay, we'll all agree to look at this one source of truth for where our spend is going, what our results are doing. So yeah, that silo thinking is a massive challenge that we need to try and overcome. And on the other hand, you can send this slide to one of your clients if you like, think about cutting budgets. But yeah, investing in marketing is really important, especially in times of crisis like the current recession. I'm not sure whether we're dangling in or out of a recession at the moment, but yeah, it's definitely not a flush time for a lot of consumers in the UK, which we need to be aware of. But research shows that growth comes from brand investments, so taking it back to the fundamentals here. You may have seen a chart like this before, we put it in our colours, but you can see where the short-term results, they look great initially because you're seeing that massive sort of sales spike when you've launched a new promotion, a new sale. But really, in the long term, that isn't really getting you anywhere. It's the brand line that you want to pay attention to, so your brand building, your long-term sales growth over time, that work really pays off. It's that time element again and that commitment to that long-term strategy that we need to have a think about, especially when we're not as reliant on cookies anymore. And another good news, brand building helps with lower price sensitivity. People trust your brand, people know you, people don't mind if you've gone up by 10%. Whereas if you're a lower price brand, you might only have the fact that you're the cheapest to really separate you from your competitors. And also brand building is found to be key for long-term profit. I know the stats are pretty small in here, so if you want the slides afterwards with the sources, I can send them to you. So, we've gone through the problems, and I think it's time to talk about the potential solutions and some tips and tricks that we can use to try and get over some of these hurdles that we're facing. So, proving cause and effect. You should be aware of your limitations and know that we can't know much for sure, but gather a lot of evidence to aid your decision making, whether you're in-house or agency. And with it taking time, you need to find ways to basically see the future, find ways to do better forecasting and try and measure that long term today, whether that's really strong forecasting that you can evidence actually works, and short-term KPIs that basically ladder up to your long-term goals. And for siloed thinking, we've got loads and loads of thoughts from Holly just then. But we need to work to share goals, blend those long-term measurements and short-term attributions to get a bit of a better picture of what everyone's piece of the sort of puzzle is doing when it comes to our overall goals. Fab, so moving on to some practical ways, hopefully, to succeed and grow. This sounds really basic, but I think it's important when you're running campaigns, especially when you're starting to mess with upper funnel and top of funnel, to be really clear on your goals, objectives, and KPIs. I think I've seen instances where maybe we've started to invest in something generic for the first time, or some YouTube campaigns, and the clients are quite used to seeing the typical ROAS from Google Ads. You might not necessarily get that with some of these new strategies. So again, pretty reductive, but it's a strategy on the slide, and I think this is something to send over to your client with more detail to make sure you're on the same page. So depending on what audience you're going after or what objective you're looking for, you need to have different metrics. I think some of the benefits of these top metrics, if they seem a bit fluffy, like brand lift, new user traffic, they're not going to be as impacted by cookie deprecation compared to your last click revenue and your return on ad spend. If you are still very wedded, obviously, to seeing that direct return, then maybe think about different ways to get there, whether that's like blended ROAS across all the channels or cost of sale, and we're starting to use that with a lot more clients now who are not wanting to get rid of direct return altogether, but start to see it as more as a big picture. And this is really tricky, but try and get buy-in for longer-term marketing efforts. Become that person that clients can turn to, not just for that short-term sales activation, but for those longer-term efforts and long-term vision. Lovely case study here, just one slide from it. We did a TikTok campaign last year, year before, with a leading e-commerce hair care brand, I can't name. But it was all awareness focused, massive kind of risk from them. They were really not well known in the haircare space, and they wanted to become known. And they recognised they couldn't just keep pumping money into retargeting to make that happen. We needed to go after new people. So we did a big TikTok campaign. There was loads of stuff to it, but we did find that it had a huge impact on branded paid search demand. So all of those metrics went right up. It was great to see. They got loads more revenue off the back of it, more than we spent on the TikTok campaign. But it relied on us actually talking to the PPC team for once to actually get these metrics and realise that, actually it did have a result, but it wasn't the direct one-to-one return that a client might have been expecting before. And another metric to look at, share of search. So been floating around for a little while now, but if you're not used to seeing it, it might be useful to have a think about how this might play a role in your strategy. So you can see I've taken our client out, but we nicked a little bit of share from Olaplex during this campaign, which is really great for us to see, and that actually continued after the campaign as well. So we were able to see that brand growth was pretty sustained, even though we weren't pumping tens of thousands of pounds into TikTok consistently, which is really good to see. If you're not familiar with share of search, it's a metric which a lot of studies link it to sort of more wider, more traditional brand health metrics, to a brand position within the market, but it's really accessible. So you basically take your share of search, and how you get to it, you take searches for your brand. So if you've got Olaplex, you take Olaplex, then divide that by searches for all the brands in your category. So you do it each month, a select number of competitors that you believe are all your brands in your category that you want to keep an eye on. If your numbers start going up, people are searching for you more than your competitors, and obviously the inverse is also true. So definitely worth looking at, and you can automate this with various dashboards. It's really useful inside the clients really learn. And although I've shown you that amazing one-sided case study, you need to make your own really, you need to prove it. You need to make your own and prove it for your individual businesses. So people aren't going to make massive changes and massive investments and sign up to 12-month strategies just on the basis of theory. Start designing campaigns and doing a really well-defined test where you've suggested your hypothesis, what you want to get from it, what your measurement results will look like, and get the client fully on board with it before you start doing it, and do it as if you're writing it for a future award entry, future case study, and hopefully that will be compelling enough to gather that evidence and start making this decision sooner. Also, lift studies are a thing. Lift studies are interesting. We have a few sort of doubters among them with impressions, especially when they're in platform. But you could also replace a lift study with just any sort of incrementality testing. So if people aren't aware of them before, if you maybe haven't worked with them, really simple. You have your exposed group who are exposed to ads, maybe most of this room would be the exposed group, and then you have a control group, maybe 10-20% of the room who would not be exposed to the ads. You basically observe the response, and the lift is the difference between those two groups. So how much a certain metric moved by in your control group, and then your exposed group, hopefully it'll be a lot higher in your exposed group, and you could say, that was probably definitely a direct result of our ads. There's a couple of different types of lift studies, especially within platforms, so kind of divides into two rough groups. So brand lift is a really useful one to measure those brand health metrics, helps you understand the impact of advertising on brand awareness specifically, so on those core metrics you maybe don't get through share of search, maybe don't get it through seeing your branded searches go up, for example. So you can ask questions like, have you heard of this before? Do you remember seeing an ad from us in the past few days that helped to realise if you're actually resonating with people? And then you've got the conversion lift. So the same sort of principles apply, but you're trying to understand the value of your ads driving incremental sales, conversions, return on ad spends, lifting cases, for example. So the same methodology applies to both of them, just asking slightly different questions. And some really cool things for Meta, if anyone's interested, or your paid social teams might start to talk to you about these conversion lifts, but specifically the search, which is really cool. So basically, what impact is Meta having on Google organic and paid search results, which give you that percentage difference as to what the real change will be. And then the same for channels, so basically what does Meta plus YouTube equal in revenue and conversions rather than YouTube alone. So yeah, they're trying. Like, platforms are really aware that measurement is becoming tricky, and they're trying to build out more solutions for us to get to grips with it, which is really good. They do require certain minimum spends, and some clients just don't hit that, or we might decide to not do it for a specific reason. So another option to explore is maybe a geographic holdout test. So you target, say, Wales with one message, England with another, and then see the difference between them. The same logic applies, but you need to basically do the maths yourself, work it through in-house. But the benefit of this is that it's really privacy-proof, especially if you're working with business data, like you have data on where your orders are actually coming from by postcode. So then you break it down to, okay, was that postcode exposed to chlorides or not? And start to get that data in a more like cookie-proof way. You're not relying on our platforms to know exactly who did what when it comes to your website. And a word in attribution. I'm not a media effectiveness professional, but I work with a lot of them and I love them. I think it's a great discipline. But so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what attribution kind of means and what that might mean post cookies as well. So people saying it's dead, and you just need econometrics, which can be really expensive. People are saying it's dead, yes and no, potentially, and then, yeah, it's not dead, but it's not perfect either. There's a lot of people hedging their bets, but ultimately, the consensus within a lot of the rooms is that it's on the way out, and it's becoming even more difficult when we don't have that information to hand. Difference between the two, if you haven't kind of seen it just on a slide before, is attribution matching 2 data points. So, clicks to purchase, did someone purchase off this or not? That's how Google Ads is reporting, that's how Meta Ads is reporting. It's what we're all used to seeing on a day-to-day basis. Whereas measurement or incrementality looks to measure the true effectiveness of advertising activities. So what actually happens as a result of seeing our ads? What was the contribution of each channel rather than the attribution? And yeah, ultimately, the main difference, attribution, you're trying to attribute on a singular user level. It's a little bit vague now because of how the platforms kind of bucket people into different groups, but they're still trying to make that sort of one-to-one connection. Whereas measurement uses much more a statistical approach, is working with large sort of streams of data to try and get to the truth. And yeah, if you've not worked with much before, there's marketing mix modelling, sometimes called media mix modelling, depending on who you talk to. You basically collect all the relevant factors to your performance. I think there's meant to be a few more emojis in there. But yeah, like whether, the price of your products, what promotions you're running, including paid media, what your distribution is like, and you get all of those factors into one place. Then you do, or I wouldn't do, the media effectiveness people would do advanced statistical analysis to try and connect the dots. So when we increase TikTok spend, did the business revenue go up? It's not trying to recognise, okay, did it last click go up, and did TikTok generate X, Y, and Z purchases? It's just did the overall patterns change as a result of this one change that happened. So really, really interesting stuff. And then you'd hopefully be able to quantify each activity's effectiveness and impact, so the contribution of each channel. And what the outputs often look like is it's taking the overall revenue and it's saying, actually TikTok was pretty similar to Google Ads and Meta's not performing, so we need to do X, Y, and Z tests. So yeah, really useful and yeah, really worth investing into if your clients are already. So yeah, to sum it up, attribution, it does have benefits. Like I will still continue to use it on a day-to-day within reporting, but the benefits are it's short-term, so you can see trends day-to-day, and it's super accessible. It's cheap, it's there, it's in platform, it's ready for you. But yeah, the major downsides is it's really data-reliant and it's really simplistic, often just takes credit for itself within the channel rather than reflecting what the wider sort of marketing is doing. And yeah, downsides of measurement, much longer term, you need your clients to commit to a long-term measurement strategy, which isn't always within our control. And it can be expensive, like these people's time, they're really smart people. All the tools that we're working with might be an investment. But I'd argue that it's worth it because of the impacts on privacy and cookies, relatively privacy-proof, and encompasses multi-channel. So especially for me and for the other paid socialists, it really helps to show what we're doing after the last click kind of attribution window is done. I think last slide or so from me. But yeah, if you're wondering, like, I'm a million miles away from this, we're still using in-platform attribution. This might be a little bit small, but we've basically got a journey that we're trying to take a lot of our clients on. Some have finished the journey, some are just starting, some are somewhere in between. So at a minimum, after this, just make sure that your existing analytics and ad data is really clean and accurate, so that when you come to do these tests later on, you've got a lot of clean data to import. So working as efficiently as possible, trying to import your offline conversions. If you've got that, make sure that you've tidied up everything and you haven't got any glaring errors. Get CAPI, get consent mode set up if you haven't already. Then you start to run platform experiments, so those like geo holdout incrementality tests, you can test new campaign types, activate new geographies, do those smaller tests which give you some data as to the true impact of what you're doing. Then you might be ready to make your first media mix model, so taking your environmental offline into account, what is that overall contribution of each channel looking like? And then you're not done, unfortunately. It needs to be refined, so models get better the more data you feed into it. You've revised that with each new test that you undertake or each new change that you make within the platform, and then you have more confidence that your model's actually working. You can use it for forecasting, you can use it for media planning, it's really useful. So, a little bit on what's next, or what I'd advise you do. Bolster your data resilience, just make sure all your basics are covered, because we've still got cookies for a little while, so you might as well get the data while you can. I'd really encourage you to broaden your objectives, and then start to explore that journey of cookieless management. Thank you.